So Moses is there explaining this incredible, connected, beautiful world. He's not saying that we wish it was that way. He's saying it is that way now. So then the question of the Israelites might be, well, why don't we see it?
What happened? Have you ever thought about the book of Genesis? It's really the origin story of our beliefs. But have you ever really thought about how it came into existence?
Well, I mean, I know how I grew up, and it's interesting because you're from a Jewish background and I'm from a Christian background. So maybe we have different ways that we've first encountered the idea of the book of Genesis. But for me, it was just, I never really much thought about it. It's like, I think Moses wrote it, and it's about the beginning of the world kind of idea.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mystery of how it came into being so that it was written into an actual book.
Right. When we look at the book of Genesis, and we think about its actual origin, it's really Moses telling the story of humanity, I think, as it ought to be, to a people who have never experienced the world as Genesis portrays it.
At that time in history, it was an oral society. We're so information focused and reading. But then the main way to communicate a message was through story. And is Moses really telling the origin story to the Israelites, the origin of the world to the Israelites? He's telling them their history as they've come out of slavery.
Right, because the only thing they've really known is just a life of bondage and slavery. So it actually makes the story of Genesis is like, has the world always been like this? You know, if I grew up and as far back as I can remember in my history, where we make bricks for an oppressive regime, is that how the world began? Is that the way it's supposed to be? I would probably never even question it. And I think a lot of us don't question how we see the world or the lens through which we see the world, which we would call worldview.
We all have a worldview, whether we understand it or not, or think about it. So let's take a second and actually think about it. Think about, what is your worldview? Because in reality, there's only two worldviews. And in the book of Genesis, Moses is laying the groundwork for the worldview as God intended it.
Right, and I think that's interesting when you say that there's two worldviews. When we look through economic theory and anthropology, and even just the fate of empires, we really do see just these kind of two major worldviews playing out, which makes Genesis an astounding account as Moses is explaining to these people these worldviews. So when we start to look into Genesis, I think another misconception I had growing up, and maybe others have, if you've grown up in the church, is that God had some sort of plan A that didn't work. And so he had a plan A and it didn't work, and now we're in plan B, which is kind of limping along. But as Moses really tells the story of the origins of humanity in Genesis, what he's saying is there's really only one true worldview, and then there's a false worldview, which I've never known before. So when I look at Genesis, I look at Genesis 1, which is Moses saying, this is the way it really is supposed to be, is currently, and will be in the future. And that worldview that he's portraying or demonstrating is a worldview which we would call the connection worldview.
And so with that connection worldview, let's talk about the components of it. And as we think through the book of Genesis, especially in Genesis 1, obviously where he's starting, he's laying the groundwork for this connection worldview, the way God always meant for the world to be, and not just for the world to be, but for how we experience the world, the reality, the eternal reality of it.
Right. So think of that idea of just connection. I mean, when we look at our world, that might not be the word we come up with, but the truth, the reality of the system that we're in is that it can only be, it is connected all the time. So when we see God creating in Genesis, each part is connected to the other parts. And he doesn't create a separate piece over here that's independent of all other pieces. Even God is connected in relationship in Trinity, and God is connected to creation. So creation is really the first incarnation of the God whose whole being is relational, is connection. And to not understand that is to misunderstand the very nature of God. And so when we look at nature, as Paul says in Romans, when we look at nature at creation, we can begin to understand even the invisible qualities of God. So that the worldview itself, the lens through which Moses is telling us to see the world, is you have to see the world as a connected whole. There are no separate pieces, which is beautiful and dramatic. And then there's parts to that.
And he's
worldview.
emphasizing in every part of creation that the connection is good.
Right.
That connection is good. Every part of it, he declares as good.
And connection is good, and relationship is good, and joyful relationship is the goal of all of it. So when we look at nature, it's clear we see the way the planets work together and nature works together. And remember the example of when in Yellowstone they thought because wolves were a nuisance, they moved the wolves out of Yellowstone, and the fish in the stream died because of the connection of the wolves in the entire system. And when you remove one part, other parts die, break down.
Yeah.
Right? So any kind of idea of separation would be the worst idea you could have in the truth of the connected system that we're in. So that's that connection worldview. And when that system is connected, then it means there's enough for everyone. As everything lives in right relationship with the other components, there's a sense of, I'm here connected to you, and there's enough for me, and there's enough for you. And the whole system is built on the idea of there's enough.
Yeah, it's very harmonious.
Right, and then even as humans come in, they come in as a part of this whole, right? So in that enough, in that connection worldview, so God puts humans into this beautiful, harmonious system, and Adam and Eve are connected and they work together, and there's not this one is better than the other, but they're connected. And then he puts them inside of this beautiful world and he connects them to it. And he tells them, this is your role in this world, to manage, to protect, to multiply, and to steward the whole connected system. And he tells them, don't separate from it. Don't separate from each other. Don't separate from me. Don't separate. Stay connected, because in the connection, everything is good. Everything's enough.
And in that right relationship to everything you just described, they had authority to carry out the mission, to keep everything connected and manage it. They had an authority to do that.
That's right. And they, in and of themselves, are enough. He doesn't put them in the system and go, okay, now try and prove yourselves. It's like they come in, you're enough. This is who I meant you to be, and this is enough, and go out there and name things. And then if you think about it, as Moses describes it, is they're walking in connection with God. He's walking with them through the garden, through the world. And he's saying to Adam and Eve, name these things, connect to them in identity, name these things. It's a gigantic mystery to them. Can you imagine being Adam and Eve, and God is saying, what are you going to call that? And they say, well, that's a tree. And then he's saying to them, learn about the tree, discover all the beautiful intricacies of the connections within the tree itself. And then the tree's connection to the ground and the intricacies of the soil, and everything they look into is a deeper mystery. And how much humans love mystery and exploration and creativity. So even the way we think is connected to the environment that God's put us in.
It's like we're connected to the mystery. And the mystery doesn't mean that we can't know it.
Right.
It means that there's an endless knowability.
Yes.
And so I can just imagine them laying in the field, looking up at the stars and the huge mystery that it is, but not feeling small or fearful, but realizing they're part of this great expanse.
And think about what it does in them to ask the question, what is that? And God's not there saying, this is that and this is that. He's saying, think about it. I've given you the capacity to create and to innovate because you're like me. You're connected to, you're my image in the world, which is the creator God. And now we are co-creators with God, connected, and go into the mystery and discover it. And every time you get to a certain part and you go, oh, there's what that is. And I wonder about this interesting idea that as you hypothesize about, well, I wonder what that is, you're going to have views of things that are incorrect. There's a kind of beautiful fallibility in there. Because I'm enough, I'm not getting my identity from whether I was successful. It's like I realize, wow, as I go along, I'm going to think things that maybe there's more to it than what I thought.
And sometimes we associate the word fallibility with failure. And it's not failure per se, but it's more trial and error.
Right, it's experimentation.
It's that process of discovery. This works, this didn't work, let's try something else. And it motivates us to keep pursuing.
And the idea that things are growing is this idea of progression. This connected universe is in a progression. It's starting here and it's moving to here. And in that growth and in that progression, things go this way and things go that way, and we learn and we fall down and we get back up. You know, I wonder if Adam and Eve ever fell down. Did you ever wonder? Yeah. Like they're running around and they fell down and God would be like, well, that's not supposed to happen.
Right.
But if they fall down, I don't think they fell down and thought, what was that and why did that happen? But it's just part of learning how to run around.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, why did I fall? It's like, oh, maybe I slow down or speed up. But it's like that whole beautiful fallibility inside the mystery, because mystery can only be there with fallibility as a component, a connected component to it. And maybe above all else that Moses is explaining in this amazing connected worldview is that every part of it recognizes the value of the other part. The word connection doesn't mean anything unless there's another to be connected to. So every time Adam looks at Eve or Eve looks at Adam and they look at the planet, they realize it's the other that gives me a sense of connection. So it has to be other focused. And so that's where Moses is beginning. It's like, this is the world as it truly is while he's describing it to the Israelites. This is the way it's intended to be, connected. Everything you see as you need to see yourself as part of the connection. There's enough for everyone. As we stay connected, there's enough. It's a mystery. We're going to learn. We're going to figure things out. We're going to discover things together. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to think things first in our limited knowledge, and we're going to learn more and add more and change things. And the whole time, we're going to realize our deep dependency on each other to stay connected, to stay focused.
So as Adam and Eve are experiencing the world and the connection of the world in the very beginning, I think as they see everything that you just described, they're also realizing in and of themselves that they are enough.
Right.
And the relationship they have with each other is a mystery, and that it's trial and error, and that the best way it works out is focusing on the other person and not being self-centered. And so there's the big picture, and then there's the micro picture of how it works out in and of themselves.
And so Moses is there explaining this incredible, connected, beautiful world. He's not saying that we wish it was that way. He's saying it is that way now. So then the question of the Israelites might be, well, why don't we see
what
that?
happened? Yeah.